Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Newsbrowse News broadcast. JIJI press reports that Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel has issued a stern warning of a bloodbath should the United States launch an attack, firmly asserting Cuba's legitimate right to self-defense. This comes after a U.S. news report detailed Havana's alleged acquisition of over 300 military drones from Russia and Iran, potentially intended for use against U.S. targets, including Guantanamo Bay and Florida. In response to rising tensions, Washington intensified its pressure by sanctioning Cuba's primary intelligence agency and several high-ranking officials, including ministers and generals. These measures follow a U.S. oil blockade on Venezuela, Cuba's main fuel supplier, which has severely worsened Cuba's humanitarian and energy crisis, leading to frequent blackouts. Cuba views these actions as attempts to create a pretext for military intervention. According to Linghe Zabao, Australia, the world's third-largest wheat exporter, is facing a significant reduction in its wheat output this year, potentially cutting exports by as much as 10 million tons. This downturn, which accounts for approximately 5% of global annual wheat exports, is attributed to a dual impact of geopolitical conflict and environmental challenges. The Iran war has led to a sharp increase in the prices of fuel and fertilizers, crucial for agricultural production. Concurrently, Australian farmers are contending with heightened drought risks. As a result, many farmers are drastically scaling back their wheat planting areas and reducing fertilizer usage to manage costs. Agricultural analysts warn that if this dry spell persists, Australia's wheat production could fall by 16% to 41% from last year's 36 million tons. The concern is exacerbated by similar production cuts anticipated in other major exporting nations like Argentina and Canada, raising fears that the global wheat market could shift from oversupply to undersupply, thereby driving up international food prices. German Finance Minister Christian Lindner, speaking in Paris, emphasized the urgent need for G7 nations to reduce their dependency on rare earths. According to Linghe Zabao, Lindner stated that while options exist, time is of the essence, and the goal must be accelerated. G7 governments are working to coordinate actions to lessen their reliance on China for critical minerals and rare earths. Lindner urged improving procurement methods, exploring opportunities to expand rare earth production, and implementing a recycling quota system for critical raw materials. He referenced previous energy crises, such as the U.S.-Iran war exposing G7's fossil fuel dependence and the Russia-Ukraine war revealing Germany's gas dependency, as warnings to avoid new dependency traps. Lindner also highlighted Europe's need to protect its interests in global competition, advocating for more European patriotism to strengthen the continent's sovereignty and resilience. He met with French President Emmanuel Macron, agreeing on the critical importance of Franco-German cooperation for Europe's progress. Lindner is scheduled to meet with U.S. Treasury Secretary Becente, referring to Janet Yellen in English summaries, to discuss the impacts of the U.S.-Iran war, with G7 finance ministers reportedly agreeing on the need for a swift ceasefire and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Lescure, referring to Bruno Le Maire in English summaries, the French finance minister who chaired the meeting, reiterated concerns about global economic imbalances fueling trade friction and potential financial market instability, citing unsustainable patterns of Chinese underconsumption, U.S. overconsumption, and European underinvestment. Antar News reports that Hidayat Nur Wahid, Deputy Speaker of Indonesia's People's Consultative Assembly, MPR, has called on the government to immediately secure the release of 5 Indonesian citizens. These individuals were detained by Israeli forces after their Gaza-bound humanitarian flotilla was intercepted in international waters. Wahid strongly condemned Israel's actions, describing them as continuous humanitarian violations and a serious breach of international law. The 5 Indonesians, including journalists and activists, were part of the global Sumud Flotilla 2.0 mission aiming to highlight conditions in Gaza. According to Foreign Ministry spokesperson Yvonne Mwenkang, the vessel carrying the Indonesians was intercepted on Monday. The Indonesian Foreign Ministry is coordinating with its embassies in Cairo, Rome, Amman, and Istanbul to provide assistance to the detained citizens. Wahid emphasized that the incident reflects a lack of firm international sanctions against Israel. Maritime traffic through the Strait of Hormuz saw a slight increase last week, returning to averages observed since the start of the Middle East conflict after having reached a wartime low. JIJI Press reported that 55 commodity vessels transited the strategic waterway between May 11th and 17th, a significant rise from the 19 vessels recorded the previous week, which was the lowest since the initial U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28th. Iranian state television indicated that the Revolutionary Guards are permitting increased transit. Despite the rise, last week's crossings remain in line with wartime averages, which stand at 55 vessels per week since March 1. Around half of the tankers carried liquids, including 3 very large crude carriers. CLR data also shows 15 dry bulk commodity vessels and 16 Avayad's PG tankers. Only 1 LNG tanker transited. In peacetime, the strait handles about a fifth of global oil and LNG shipments. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.